Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 14th episode of the XDA Android podcast. My name is Mario Serafero. I'm editor-in-chief at xdadevelopers.com. We've taken a long break, but you know how this goes. We're here to talk about the latest in Android tech news from an enthusiast perspective. We've just had Mobile World Congress last week, and we have a lot to talk about. First of all, I also like to say that we are doing a OnePlus X giveaway, courtesy of 20amobile.com. If you want to get into the contest, all you must do is head to the companion article of this podcast and leave a comment saying why you want a OnePlus X, what you think about it, whatever is related to OnePlus X. Be sure to leave the comment with your Disqus account that is also linked to your XDA account, or that is the same as your XDA account, so we can know how to contact you. Anyway, so we have a lot to talk about.
Yeah, we do. I'm Corey Fiak. I'm an Android developer, and I'm also from the Android subreddit.
And Daniel Marchena from the Android subreddit as well, handle Ultimax98. And I have got a Galaxy S7.
Oh, there we go.
Yep. I did not like doing that, I'll be honest with you. That's a very odd feeling, putting a phone into a cup of water.
Right.
But yeah, so I've got a Galaxy S7 Edge. I was doing a quasi AMA on Reddit earlier. I've had it for about 8 hours now. It was delivered earlier this morning. And so what questions do you guys have for me regarding the device?
Okay. Well, is it pretty?
Oh, that's beyond. It is an absolutely gorgeous phone. It doesn't have the sharp edges I think that the Galaxy S6 Edge had, because everything's rounded. The background's forward. The front has like a steeper gradient, kind of like the Note Edge had. And I think it melds to the plastic, to the metal frame just a little bit more, and it's not that sharp contour that the S6 Edge had. And it's gorgeous, especially in black.
Okay, so the first thing that I'm noticing right now is the always-on screen. What do you think of that so far?
Yeah, it's a mixed bag. I love it because it's always on, and it's going to take some getting used to, I think, for anybody who's used a Nexus device or a Motorola device who's used to seeing the always on display when you've got a notification waiting. So you always want to reach for it and check and see what the notification was. Again, always on literally means always on. It's never gone off unless it's in my pocket or flipped upside down. And you'll see eventually it'll move. You can put a little background behind it. You can change the kind of clock and the information on it. It's real basic. You still have your notification light on the top as well. The downsides to it, though, is it seems to only work with Samsung applications. So missed calls, voicemails, text messages, and emails are the only thing that actually comes through. So like you can see right now, I've got a notification waiting, and it's a sync for Reddit notification. But I can't physically do anything to get that through this screen. You actually have to wake your device. Oh, help if I wasn't pushing a volume button. You have to wake your device before you can actually see the notification. So that, coming from a Nexus device with the always-on mode in Marshmallow and Lollipop, or a Motorola device, that's definitely a change in concept.
Yeah. Yeah, what's interesting is that Samsung it's actually known to do this. I remember, I think it was I can't remember if it was the S3 or the Note 3, but you could actually have lock screen notifications way ahead of Lollipop. But, of course, it was limited to their dialer app and to their text messaging app. And also, every time you got a text message, your device would wake, like the screen would wake, which was more than annoying. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I'm not surprised at all that they would do that. It would be nice to see a better incorporation with third-party apps, though.
That's kind of another interesting thing as well, is when you get a notification, your display doesn't wake. It'll stay in this state, and it won't wake. It won't show you what you've got. You don't have a peak or a pop or anything like that. Even if it's a Samsung notification, you can't physically see what the notification was. Like if you get a text message, you can't see who it was or what it was from while it's in this state. And I mean, Samsung still has their awkward things. Like, even though my phone's technically unlocked, I still can't open a notification straight from the lock screen. I have to tap and then swipe. So it still has some of those nuances that TouchWiz is famous for.
Well, honestly, it's not just TouchWiz, and I really hate this about OEMs that modify the Android lock screen, which I think, Google has a pretty good lock screen. I was not very pleased with the Lollipop implementation with the swipe up, but I got used to it, and lock screen notifications on stock Android certainly work much better than they do in TouchWiz and other OEM skins like the Emotion UI. And Emotion UI, it's also a complete... Well, it's not pretty. I was going to use a swear word, but I'd rather refrain.
Family-friendly podcast.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about the lock screen, another question that I had was, have you been able to play around with the fingerprint sensor much? How well does it work? How fast is it compared to previous phones like the Galaxy S6?
So again, it's kind of a mixed bag, and that's kind of what my thoughts are about the device in general over the past 8 hours or so. It's very fast. There's no animation for... I'm trying to get it to unlock there. I think it's... Yeah,
you're probably doing it a weird orientation.
No, it's still getting water on the key from when I had it in the, in the drink.
The introduction.
There's no animation from the lock screen to the home screen, so it appears to be very fast, but I have gotten notifications where it says, hold your finger on the key longer to unlock, because I'm used to my iPhone, which... And you can press the button and pull your finger off, and then it's still going to go through the unlock process. This seems like it needs a little bit extra time to actually physically unlock the device, and I don't recall that happening on the Galaxy S6. But the animation itself is very fast, so it feels like it's going faster than it is because there is no animation.
Yeah. Right.
But
okay, another thing that you should try, I do remember that being the case with the Note 5, at least on the stock firmware, but I also do remember that if you pressed it did it a little bit faster.
You mean hold it down, or?
Yeah, like hold it down and then release it.
I always hold it down and then release it.
Okay.
That's what I typically use to wake it. I mean, I guess it is a little bit more accurate. Move it over here.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still an obvious delay in.
Yeah.
How long it takes, which I guess it isn't a terrible thing, because sometimes you do want to see your lock screen and see if you've got notifications on it. I know the iPhone 6S, which I'm coming from, it's too fast to the point where you will miss notifications sitting on your lock screen because it's just a blur from screen off to you're at your home screen.
Yeah.
And on iOS, it removes all your notifications once you do that, so you're kind of screwed. But so it's not a issue, I don't think. It's just you got something you got to get used to.
Yeah. So let's talk performance. I know that's going to be a hot point for most people because it's TouchWiz, and it still looks like TouchWiz. Thank you for the gallery image, by the way, that we hosted on XDA. A lot of people seem to like that, and a lot of people seem to not like that because it's TouchWiz still.
Yeah, it's again, it's a mixed bag. It's incredibly fast for some things, and then I'm seeing like just weird UI lags in odd places. The keyboard, of course, just like the Note 5 had, where you can be typing on it real fast and it actually takes time to catch up. I'm seeing that a lot, and I'm actually seeing where it does that and it starts getting autocorrect wrong. Like, it'll just start putting in random words for no reason. So that's still there. I mean, I use the, Google Now launcher instead of the TouchWiz launcher. I really hate the TouchWiz launcher. And it's fast. I don't really notice any, stutter that I use. The camera still opens real fast. Going in and out of recent apps is fast. I haven't really experienced anything that's just like, oh my God, this is horrible, or issues like I had with the Galaxy S6 where apps would be forced closing while you're using them.
Yeah.
But it's just weird issues here and there. And I think that's more a testament to Marshmallow. I had the same problem on my Nexus 6 where you'd open an application and it would just, not respond to touch for a couple seconds. But so I don't think TouchWiz is too much to blame for it, but it's probably a little bit to blame. But everything that TouchWiz does actually works pretty fast. Edge apps work pretty quick. Swiping on the corners to minimize into floating applications, all of that's really fluid. Of course, it does have the judder when you use the GPU profiling. You can see all the drop frames, and when it drops below, 30 or 60 frames a second. But it doesn't affect day-to-day usage too bad.
Well,
so then,
I just want to say that people are going to blame TouchWiz anyway. So it would be nice eventually, where I know that at XDA I want to get our hands on this thing and test it out in depth to see if it's actually TouchWiz, if it has to do with throttling. You had mentioned that the phone actually gets hot, which is surprising because it's a Snapdragon 820, which is supposed to fix this, and it has a heat pipe, which is supposed to fix this even further. Now, I've gotten a report from Eric from XDA that also he also says that his phone gets hot. In fact, I quote, the figure he used was 12,000 degrees. I think that he was exaggerating a little bit, but you get my drift.
I haven't noticed mine getting that hot. It seems to have something to do with the radios, because when it seems like it's struggling for signal and trying to pull down something and you're doing a CPU intensive task, it heats up. But I ran Antutu benchmark 2 or 3 times back to back to back, and it was only getting moderately warm. Right. But I have definitely noticed to where you grab it and you're like, wow, this is it's a pretty toasty device right now. So I don't think it's just the CPU. I think it might be more of some other issues that are going on as well with the phone.
I saw people conjecturing too on Reddit that potentially the heat pipe that they've added to the phone could be leading to some thermal transfer to the external case of the device. These are just conjectures at this point.
To be honest, that sounds like a really plausible theory, because it doesn't get hot in one spot. You do feel it up this corner here, right. But it does feel like it's dispersing across the entire back. You don't grab it and it's like, oh my God, there's, like on my Galaxy Nexus, there was one spot like right here that would get like blazing hot. So you don't feel that. You feel it, just the whole device just gets warm. It's kind of a hard way to describe it, but it's nothing that's really like, causing alarm. I don't notice the device slowing down. I did notice in my benchmarks, I think I hit 121 was one of my highest scores in Antutu, and I think the test right after it hit 113. So there's definitely throttling going on in the background. I don't think it's really affecting real-world usage too much, and I don't think most people are ever going to notice that.
Well, I'll tell you where it'll be a big deal. It's not, it sounds like it's not like painful to the hand to hold like we've seen on other devices. But coming from using the Galaxy S6 with the Gear VR, there's some applications you can use on it for only 10 or 15 minutes, and it overheats, and then you basically have to quit your VR session to allow it to cool down. So I'll be really interested once I get my unit, and once you're able to get a Gear VR headset, to see does it perform better in VR, because quite frankly, with their pre-order promotion where they're giving out free Gear VRs, there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be testing that out, and really the thermal performance we've been seeing with that in the past has not been very stellar. So my hope is this heat pipe can help in that area.
Yeah, I think it will, and I think that's why the device gets warm and not like uncomfortably hot when you're just doing CPU and GPU intensive tasks. It seems to be the radio is what really gets this thing cooking. So I think that Samsung has probably worked with that, and that's probably something they were working with to make sure that didn't happen, where you're only using it for 5 or 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden you've got to stop using your device. But I'm sure if that happens, the warning will come up. Oh, you need to get back to reality for the next 10 minutes. Well, in reality, your phone just needs to cool down.
Yeah.
I've seen people on Reddit. They're putting actual fans. They're modding their devices and like velcroing a fan on the back of the device to really use it through VR.
A couple of 60mm case fans on the front of that, cooling it down pretty good.
No. Yeah, we've seen hard mods of people applying extra thermal paste to their devices. We've actually featured one of these in the XDA portal. It's an XDA forum member. He actually opened up his Nexus 6B and apply thermal paste with good reason. I mean, it's running a Snapdragon 810, which even on the Nexus 6B and even under careful Google and Huawei engineering, it would still, cause some issues.
Yeah.
Another thing that you mentioned, Corey, which is true, is the fact that this has to run under heavy VR loads. I think it's smarter that if this theory is true, that the heat actually gets transferred to the outside of the body instead of inside of the body, which it would make absolute sense if they're aiming for heat efficiency and a well distributed heat around the body. That would actually help a lot with VR. In fact, I had argued in one of my articles that this was one of the things that they had to tackle in order to maximize the VR experience, because in the Galaxy S6, VR was known to throttle and was known to get hot. And Corey, you've come over and you've tried, you've tried the Galaxy S6 with your VR headset, and you had to take a break. You actually did go before the Samsung event. We watched it here live, and what he did was he actually put the Galaxy S6 in the freezer ahead of the event so that he could watch it in VR with a completely cool phone. which was pretty cool, admittedly. Anyway.
Unfortunately, you didn't crack your screen doing that.
Well, I was thinking about that, but I'd heard some other people that said that they were doing it, and it really is no different than, I live in Minnesota, stepping outside for 15 minutes and walking down the road and then coming back in.
Yeah, that's true. It's not actually getting nice now. On my way back, there was still some wind, and I was confident enough I didn't bring my gloves, so I kind of suffered it, and it didn't feel nice, but hey, at least it's getting warm, which means that I'll probably get lower benchmark scores. Anyhow,
so the other interesting thing is there's another novel way to handle this now is I can see someone just grabbing a bath of ice water and plopping the phone in there for about a minute to cool it down.
That would work now.
Right?
Liquid cooling.
Yeah. There you go. That's amazing. You should actually run some benchmarks underwater, under ice cold water, and see what happens.
That would actually be something that I might actually do.
Yeah.
But I did have some other thoughts about the device as well. After using it, one of the coolest things though I wanted to mention is it looks like the US variants are shipping with this. This is a OTG cable in the box. Mm-hmm. To be honest, I didn't expect them. I saw it on some of the international packages. They had it, but I didn't think the US models was going to get it. So that's really cool that they're packaging this with you. I guess it kind of takes some of the sting off the fact that it doesn't have USB Type-C. And I'm not sure what their end game is with that, but maybe we'll start seeing them advertise it. But that's actually really cool that they include it. And it's a nice, neat, small little package too. It's not like a cable like most of them. But I do want to air one of my biggest grievances with this device, and I talked about this a little bit on the Reddit post, and that has to do with this SIM tray and the micro SD card. So let me pop this out and kind of show you guys. I know, Corey, I was talking to you at length about the problem. So as we know, the SIM tray is a combo tray. It's not metal. So it flexes really, really easily. And the SIM card, and it's not doing it right now, but I've actually had the SIM card fall out the bottom of it. So it's not holding it very well. If you look really closely, you can actually see all of the gapping around the individual cards. And what is happening is my micro SD card is unmounting continually. I was at work today, and every time I sat the device down on the table, and I don't sit it down hard, my SD card would unmount and then remount. And then also, when you're trying to put the SIM tray back in, see, there we go, right there. You're trying to put the SIM tray back. I'm trying to get the angle.
Oh, boy.
And the card pops up and then gets lodged in the tray.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, this is, and you need to be pressing down on the card as you put it in there in order for it to go flush. Yeah. I don't think most people are going to be concerned about this. But I definitely think it is going to affect people who are switching out their SIM cards frequently or like to take in and out the SD card because that sucks. It sucks having to make sure you're putting it in just perfectly so that it doesn't crack. They should have made that SIM tray out of metal, and the tolerances should have been a heck of a lot closer.
Well, now we know why they haven't included adaptable storage.
It could
that would be an issue, wouldn't it? I'm not being serious, but honestly, that would be an issue. Let's just hope that this is a flaw to regarding your particular device, but the way you describe it and it having to do with the actual build of the SIM tray, it seems that it could actually be a more general thing.
Yeah, it definitely seems like it's just a design flaw. I've never ever used a SIM tray before that's not metal. Every iPhone I've used, the Galaxy S6 I think was metal as well. The HTC Ones were always metal. They always were aluminum or some sort of metal. And this is the first plastic one, and you can see it flex as you start to push it in there because there's obviously low tolerances for waterproofing and stuff. So,
but bro, think of that 1 gram that they saved.
Yeah, or the 0.1 cent they saved on the manufacturing cost.
Yeah, no, but the grams are more important in the spec sheet,
I don't know if Samsung cares about that anymore because and now the S7 Edge, this is remarkably light for its size, but the S7 itself is actually a pretty portly device, and they're both kind of thick as well. I think
they did go about a millimeter thicker on the device to be able to fit a bigger battery in it.
And you feel it, but it feels better.
I don't think it's just for the battery though. I mean, consider that the whole thing is waterproof within. You know, I don't think it's precisely the battery. It could just be way more intelligent. You know, internal body distribution and hardware allocation within that particular volume.
I think also, too, how far the screen goes down has something to do with it as well. This is a sharper edge like the Note Edge had instead of the Galaxy S6 Edge and the 6 Edge Plus.
That's nice.
So I think that had something to do with it, too. It's a sharper edge, so you need, you know, more space in order to have your frame in the back of your device as well.
That's true. Otherwise, the volume buttons just wouldn't feel right.
Exactly. And, I mean, you notice it's a little bit thicker than the S6 was, but to me, it fits in my hand better. It's kind of like if you've ever used an iPhone 6 and then used the iPhone 6S. The 6S is thicker and heavier, but it feels better in your hand than the lighter, thinner device does. So I definitely think it was a smart move from Samsung. And the cameras are incredible. Double tap to wake still works perfectly fine. It's fast. As long as you don't have your SD card mount and remount, because then you get a splash screen every single time that says, hey, you can use your SD card for external storage, and it sucks every time it pops up. And the front camera now, I didn't know this, I didn't hear them announce this at the announcement, but the front camera is f1.7 as well.
Okay.
So you're actually going to get a lot better lower light, I guess selfies out of the front camera as well for people who that matters to. But I mean, it is a nice change, and I definitely think Samsung, they put all of their eggs in the right baskets with this device for sure.
Have you tried any of the slow motion video recording? We've been seeing on Reddit that it seems to be 240 FPS slow-mo video recording on the device.
Then the important thing is at 720p. I haven't played with it too much, but I have seen some of the videos that have been coming out. And in the past, they used to do 480p, which is your standard definition, and then upscale it to 720p after the fact. And it would cause, that's why the Galaxy series, it always had crappy, really slow-mo. It looked grainy and just nothing like the iPhone does.
Low resolution.
Exactly. And from what I understand, the S7 will do full 720p, 240 frames per second. Like I said, I haven't gotten a chance to play with it yet. I haven't really played with the camera very much at all. I had to work and then had some meetings this evening. So I will be playing with it a little bit more tomorrow and getting some thoughts out there as well regarding that.
Good. Well, last thing I wanted to hear about is the audiovisual experience, which includes both the screen but also the speakers. And I'm not sure if you've been able to try out some headphones to test the DAC.
Yeah. So I'm actually pleasantly surprised with a lot of those. First, I'll start with the audio quality. The bottom speaker, it's loud. It definitely doesn't have the bass. And I think the entire device is actually tuned more towards the high end of the spectrum. But, as far as having a waterproof speaker, it's much better than like what you had in the Galaxy S5, where when you had music playing, the whole back of the phone vibrated and it just all felt disgusting. It doesn't sound like it's a waterproof speaker. It actually sounds fairly good. But again, it's a smartphone speaker. You're not getting close to what you're getting with the 1 series. Probably not getting what you're getting with the 6P.
Well, the A9,
I haven't played with the. Oh yeah, I forgot that's still a 1 series. So the 1M series.
Yeah, there you go.
With boom sound, you're nowhere near boom sound. But it's a hardware speaker. I really can't say anything more than that. It's gonna suck. You're not going to use it for much more than, listening to music and holding it up to your ear if you're driving in your car to overcome the background noise.
Honestly, I found that the Note 5 had a pretty loud speaker. Like, I legitimately enjoyed it. I used it to listen to stuff when doing the dishes, and I could hear it just fine over, all the noise of that terrible pain I wasn't doing.
Well, it's loud. It's just not good. There's a big difference between the two of them. Whereas the 1 series was loud and good. This one's loud and, it's, I guess, kind of tinny, but it's not really that tinny.
Very important distinction, though. A lot of people conflate loud with being good and thought that the HTC One was louder. But, in fact, when you're doing side-by-side tests, it wasn't very much louder, if at all. It just had a much higher quality sound to it. But, again,
exactly.
There's other alternatives. When I'm driving my car, I plug it into my stereo with just a standard, jack. So there's other alternatives, Bluetooth speakers. But it's unfortunate we're not seeing higher quality speakers. But I'm for the trade-off of not having those gigantic bezels that are on the 1M series. That might be something that's worth it.
And the black bar.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I guess that for pop music, which the whole appeal is that it's loud nowadays. I think it's fine. Obviously, if you want an actual audio listening experience, you're gonna use the headphones. Which again, the Note 5 had an amazing DAC. And it had amazing headphone audio. Like, I really, really loved it.
Yeah, and that's something that I do like about this phone. Now, I don't think it's as good as the Wolfson chip that ships with most Exynos. But from what I understand, there's rumors that the DAC that's in this phone is from the company that owns Wolfson. I believe Wolfson got bought out recently, and the company that owns them built the DAC for this phone. I think it's called Lucky or something.
That's good.
And it sounds really good. It has a lot of volume. It's clear pretty much throughout the range. It doesn't have the bass, though. Again, it is tuned a little bit more towards the high end. But the cool thing is Samsung gives you a really good equalizer. And if you use your adaptive sound and all that kind of stuff, you can get it to sound pretty decently. If you're into rooting, of course, you're going to go and you're just going to throw on Viper. Or if you're a real audiophile, you're going to be using a DAC anyway. So, it's kind of a moot point there. But I think it's a really good audio. I'm happy with the audio quality of it. The screen is incredible. Just like any modern Samsung device, it's beautiful. It looks fantastic. It's bright. It's colorful. Pretty much everything is checked. There is one weird issue I'm having with this, and Mario, maybe you can tell me if this happens on the Note 5. When it goes into its high brightness setting and you're outside walking around.
Yes, I know what you're going to say. When it gets to the auto brightness, the colors get distorted.
Well, the color stays perfect on this. It doesn't do that anymore. Where the colors got like flashed out. It actually stayed very good.
Okay.
The weird thing is on your whites, they kind of have a greenish hue to them. I can kind of see the green pixels almost over a green casting. But when you take your thumb and hover over it, it has a red shadow. It's really, really weird. It's kind of a trippy effect when you're looking at it. It's like it has like a green cast and your shadow is red. It's just really, really strange. I don't know if the Note 5
I noticed a tint. I noticed a tint before that the colors, even the whites, wouldn't look right. But that is weird, and I can't wait to try that.
When you get one, try it, and you have to use your finger as a shadow, and you'll see it. And finally, the last thought I wanted to mention about this phone is everybody's asking about the battery. I haven't had enough time to really tell you what the battery is on this device.
Yeah.
I will tell you I'm not happy with it at this point. It was, about an hour and a half ago or so, I ran out to go get some dinner, and I had 68% battery, I think. And by the time I came home, I sent a few text messages to you guys when I was out, and I came back, and I was down at like 63% or something, and I was only out for like 15 minutes. But again, it's a fresh device. I still haven't gone through. I turn everything on. I have the Google Now always listening. I switch all those bells and whistles on. So it'll probably take a little while for it to ease out, and I'll let you guys know what what I think about the battery after a few days. But I'm not entirely pleased with it at this point. It seems to be just a constant state of drain.
And that's a good thing that you mentioned that. This is something that I've saw in the subreddit is people are seeing 3,600 milliamp hours. Holy cow! This is going to have an amazing battery life. When in reality, just seeing that it's got a higher capacity battery or more charge to it doesn't necessarily equate to, if it's got 40% more battery, it's not necessarily going to have 40% more charge to it. It has to do with, it's not an equal comparison just to look at that milliamp hour number and be able to tell you how much battery life it is. To me, it's always like looking at the clock speed of a processor and trying to say how good a processor it is. It's just not going to equate to anything. So real world usage and tests are going to have to be what inform us about how the battery performs. And one last thing I wanted to add before we move on here that Daniel hasn't gotten a chance to try yet, but Mario and I have both tried is the Gear VR. We mentioned this before. Pre-orders for the S7 come with that free Gear VR, up to a certain number of them. And this thing, guys, is just phenomenal. If you don't want to go out and spend $1,500 to get an Oculus Ready PC and buy the Oculus Rift, but you've tried a Google Glass and it makes you sick. This Gear VR at that $100 price point, or free for pre-orderers of the Galaxy S7, it's just phenomenal. The positional tracking on it is outstanding. I've really enjoyed using it. I know Mario has as well, and everyone I've shown it to really likes that. So that's something to really get excited for too.
Yeah. Well, there's another huge
I don't know. Are you still there, Mario?
Oh God. Yeah, I was just
might have lost Mario.
I had an internet thing. Hello.
I think we're losing you there, Mario.
Hello.
Yep, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I was cutting out. Sorry about that. That's internet for you. Anyhow, so we've talked at length about the S7, but there's also been a huge device announcement, albeit with a much cheesier live event, which we'll also discuss, I'm sure. But that is the LG G5. Now, the LG G5 is taking a completely different approach from the S7. The S7, as Daniel has told us, is all about, perfecting the S6 and the S6 Edge and the X6 Edge Plus. Perfecting all those things. Okay. So perfecting all those things and making it much better. I'm sorry, I'm having some internet issues, but it should be just fine in the live recording. Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Anyhow.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyhow, as I was saying, the LG G5 is taking a completely different approach. We've seen LG throw everything and the kitchen sink at their new phone, which I think is pretty exciting, but it also kind of reveals, I think, the culmination of this trend where LG is trying to be a little bit more Samsung every year, and Samsung's trying to be a little bit more Apple every year. And I could definitely tell that with the live events. So I actually do want to talk about the live event of the LG G5 because it was just so amusing in the weirdest, most obnoxious way.
Yeah, it was just really bad. So the LG G5 event was the first event. It was bright and early for 7 a.m. for Mario and I, who actually got together to watch it together in person. And we just spent half the time rolling our eyes at each other. I mean, they had the cheesiest videos with like this whole like comic theme to it. And it looked like something you would have seen at a Samsung presentation 3 or 4 years ago. It's tried to like just really painful almost to sit through and watching these cheesy productions that they put together. And in contrast, the Samsung event that happened later in the day was so much more professional, so much cleaner, really had almost an Apple feeling to it in the cleanness and professionalism that they had behind it, which that contrast even made LG's LG's presentation even more worse when you compared it with Samsung's event.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I didn't get to see this event, so I'm gonna have to go off of everything you guys are telling me. But was it as bad as that? Remember which phone was it, the Galaxy S5? It might have been, or the S4. With all the women using
Broadway.
the phones for womenly things on a Broadway
it was
show.
Almost as bad. You can't quite get that bad because with that Galaxy event, it was a live theater thing. So they were actually acting this out live on stage, which just even multiplied the cringe factor. During the event here, it was pre-recorded videos. And that was really the only problem. When they were presenting it pretty professionally, but then they would cut away to these videos all the time that were just super cheesy, about as cheesy as the Samsung videos at that event you're referring to. Just it's not quite as cheesy in that it was a pre-recorded video rather than being a live presentation.
Yeah, but I mean, when you're having something called LG and Friends, you really can't help but be cheesy. I mean, I don't know who is doing their marketing, but that to me, that's just some of the worst marketing. I mean, I thought we were past that. I don't want to buy something that's going to have friends.
Right. It's a pretty bad name for a pretty interesting concept. Now, we've been talking about modular phones for a while. Google's Project Ara hasn't quite been realized yet, and so we're seeing LG try to take the step up and come out with some sort of a modular system, and that's what they've done. But there's some key problems here. First off, is I just don't know how much utility these modular friends that they've introduced really add. The camera module, for example, adds additional battery life, which we've had we've had cases that can do
No,
that.
no, Corey. It adds additional battery capacity.
Right, that's correct. Which probably will translate to some amount of additional battery life.
Here it is, because I mean all the other factors are going to remain relatively the same, or you're just going to throw more capacity at it. But yeah, it's basically just more battery and camera controls with like zoom, a zoom wheel, and some kind of gestures and a shutter button and obnoxiously large grip. Yep.
My question is though, is this really a modular device? When I think of modular, and this could just be my concept of it, I'm thinking of being able to take something about a device that you're not crazy about or whatever and swap out a part for it. So say for instance I want a 4K screen, I can go ahead and swap my 4K screen on it, or I want a 22 megapixel 8K camera, I just go and swap the module on. These things, these friends seem more like they are
accessories,
adding things, expansions, and
it's
adding
an
things on
extendable
that
device,
were never
not
really
necessarily
part of it.
modular device.
Yep. But using the buzzword modular brings a lot more attention, and it's true. I mean, there's only two things that we know about that actually expand the functionality of the phone by plugging into that new modular slot mechanism, chin, whatever you want to call it. So we know about these camera controls, which again add something like 1,200 milliampere battery. So you get a grand total of 4,000 milliampere hour, which is great. It's great. I mean, it's added capacity. The battery drain is gonna stay relatively the same unless the thing is constantly scanning for input of the wheel, whatever. You never know. But it's nice. I wouldn't use the thing just to get extra battery life because I think it looks absolutely obnoxious and ridiculous. But then you have the DAC expansion. And this is the one that I find absolutely nonsensical. Because a DAC is not, is not a particularly huge thing. In fact, and this is something that I've argued in an article just last week, is the fact that the chin is not that much bigger than the regular chin. Meaning, the regular chin could have had it, or they could have swapped whatever DAC comes inside for the better quality one and put it built in. And another thing that I find absolutely nonsensical, but I guess it makes sense from a functionality standpoint, is the fact that the bottom chin comes with a 3mm headphone jack. So you get two headphone jacks, one at the top and one at the bottom. But another point that I want to raise is that it's the fact that that thing also takes a lot of space in the chin. So they're actually pretty much the same size. It's a little bit taller, but when you add the fact that you're putting a 3mm headphone jack, which companies like Apple are allegedly trying to get rid of because it takes too much space, and you consider that the thing is like a plug that goes this deep, I think that accounts for all the extra height that you're putting in there. I think that the DAC could have come in the default chin, or could have come into the phone itself by replacing the other DAC.
Yeah, I mean, there's other devices that have high quality DACs in them, relatively,
like
quote unquote, high quality.
Yeah.
It's certainly not out of the question that they could just include that out of the box.
Yep.
And another thing too, though, is by using these modular pieces or friends, you're pretty much writing off the ability to purchase any kind of a case for this phone too. You've pretty much got to accept the fact that you're going to run a caseless phone. Now, for people like me, and I don't know if you guys run caseless, but I'm typically going without a case on my phone. It's not too big of a problem, but I'd probably say 75% of people or more use some kind of a case on their phone, and you just physically can't if you're ever going to use these. Now, I don't want to take away from the G5. There was an article that was on a site recently. I'm not going to name the site, where they talked about the G5 and how we're all focusing on these modular components, and the modular components are an add-on to the phone. The phone's already great, and these are just an add-on. To that, I completely disagree. I think that they made concessions on the device to make sure that these modular pieces and these friends worked with the phone. I think they put a smaller battery into it. I think the build, fit, and finish isn't as good. And they're writing off pretty much their entire aftermarket case department because they wanted to support these modular pieces. So in my opinion, I think the G5 is still a really good phone, but I don't think it's the phone that it could have been had they not tried to go towards this modularity. And I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of aftermarket support for this because, LG has hardly any market share to begin with. And that's, you need money to have people come over and build stuff like that.
That's true. And this is something that I've argued at length in my article too. I don't want to discredit the phone because I haven't tried it yet. I know that I will try it and I will review it and I will give it my most fair and objective judgment. However, and this is an argument that I've also agree with you on, Daniel, is the fact that it does take away from the phone when you look at it. So there's two ways to look at this. There's the way that you can look at this as, well, the modularity doesn't take away from the phone, because when you get your phone, you can choose not to use it, and you still get a pretty good package with 4 gigs of RAM, Snapdragon 820, Quad HD screen, fingerprint sensor, camera, blah, 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 right? So up until then, that argument makes sense. But, and this is the other argument that I've raised in my article, and I'm sorry, I'm having some slight quality issues. Okay, so this is the other point that I raised in my article, and it's the fact that without the modularity, the phone could have been different. The phone could have been much different. The phone could have had, for example, way smaller bezels. Now, this is a trend that I've seen in LG phones for the past few years, and it's the fact that they have completely abandoned the bread and butter of small bezels. The G2 had amazing bezels. The G3 had pretty much the same bezels. The G4 incremented the bezels. The B10 had even worse bezels, and the G5 has even worse bezels than that. And the B10 was a particularly clunky phone, so I'm not particularly confident about how this phone's going to handle. And I've included some pictures in this article showing that the bezel is actually pretty significant, especially because it has this black bezel around the screen, which, love it or hate it, it's pretty much always there now. So what compromises does this make? What does this bring to the table? Okay, so it means that the phone is bigger, the screen to body ratio is worse, and the fact that the screen is smaller too. So it has bigger bezels, smaller screen. The device is actually thinner, and the battery has gone down despite the device being taller and wider in terms of relative surface. Right?
All right, Mario. So out of what you said, I just want to say this for all the YouTube listeners. So you're probably going to have really bad audio on YouTube. We've been losing Mario, but we are all doing local recording. So everything Mario said is going to be on the local recording on the audio-only version. So, yeah, I don't think me or Corey can really respond because we couldn't hear pretty much anything that you had said there. I heard something about the battery and the height of the device. Okay. But the love of mobile networks and Hangouts. But while you try to see if you can get that remedied there.
Yeah, that'll be a special secret for the audio only listeners, I guess, if you guys want extra credit.
So Corey, what are your thoughts about the G5? I haven't heard you say a whole lot about it.
So the other interesting thing that we're glossing over here, I think the friends are stealing the show a bit, but it's a really nice. Well, in terms of build quality, it looks like it's premium build quality, quote unquote premium, right? Obviously, the looks of it don't compete with the likes of the S7. However, it's the first one that I would say we've had this premium build quality to it. Metal design with swappable battery. And that's something that I think is getting glossed over by the friends stealing the show a bit. But I can carry a second battery around with me and pop it in and swap it out if I'm having a bad. And quite frankly, batteries have been an issue, especially in the Samsung Galaxy series in the past. We're not sure about the current generation, but that's something that's interesting. Although I do think that they've missed an opportunity here. I've heard a lot of people mention, couldn't they add a smaller battery that's integrated into the phone such that you'd be able to hot swap the battery? Maybe it holds a couple hundred milliamp hours or even 100 milliamp hours to be able to, just for the 10 seconds when I'm swapping my battery out, my phone doesn't have to power off and power back on again.
I agree with you. I think that is a huge missed opportunity there. That, not being able to hot swap your component and not being able to go from your external DAC to your camera controls, and just hot swap it in the middle of the moment. That does really suck.
Yeah, that's true. LG phones haven't had particularly the fastest storage. I do hope that they put a fast storage solution so at least the reboots are not as significant and as annoying. I know that Galaxy phones, they boot really fast. I mean, the Note 5, even the Note 4 booted relatively fast, but the Note 5, oh my god.
Yeah, the S7 it boots moderately fast. I have the boot protection turned on, so I have to type in my PIN number while it's booting. And it uses the new, I think it's the first Samsung device that's using the new forced encryption from Marshmallow as well. So I think it did take a hit for sure from the, at least what I remember the Note 5. The Note 5 was an absolute, blazing fast booter. I think this one takes a hit because of that encryption.
Yeah. I would imagine it would. Yeah.
The one thing, though, that I wanted to mention as well about LG is their software. I can't look at an LG device and not kind of think it looks like a clown car. Because those software buttons are so big.
Oh, God, yes.
I don't know what's wrong with them and why they haven't fixed them yet. They're like 3 times the size that they need to be. But, we see them going towards a premium device and throwing a whole second camera module, not like the ultra pixel gimmick, which is a 2 megapixel, or I can't remember how big the little one was. This is like a full 8 megapixel shooter plus the standard shooter. They're throwing in these modular components, everything, and they still can't fix their software. I mean, Samsung, we can give them, crap all day long, but at least they have tried to be fixing their software and they're making great strides in that avenue. LG just seems to be stuck and they haven't changed anything, but they keep on trying to add new stuff on there. And that's what's disappointing me most to think about the G5. The whole package disappoints me. But just the fact that they haven't improved their software. The Android game has gotten so far advanced. We don't have Moto Blur anymore. We don't have the Xperia thing that they were doing before they went towards a close to AOSP solution. And then you have Samsung, which is toned down TouchWiz with respects. And then, of course, you've got all your Chinese companies. But LG is still sitting there stuck in, the ice cream sandwich days of their look. So that bugs me a lot.
Yeah. I wouldn't go as far as saying that it's ice cream sandwich, but what bothers me the most, and I've said this repeatedly in the podcast and in my articles, is just the blatant inconsistency when companies like LG and Samsung refuse to adopt material design, and when they add all these ridiculous blurs and all this ridiculous iconography, or in Samsung's case, the fact that they put words on their toggles and on their icons, the fact that they replace icons with words. Now, I wouldn't be as quick to judge the G5. I want to have it in my hands, and I want to actually experience it before I can, condemn it. I actually think that the package itself, excluding all of the modularity things and the nonsense that it brings, that I might end up enjoying if they release some modules, and I'm not discarding the possibility that they're going to do something really interesting with it. But I just hope it's not a fire and forget kind of gimmick. But anyway, what I was saying is, it's still it's a nice package. I mean, it's got a Snapdragon 820. It's got a nice Quad HD screen. It's got the always-on display for feature parity with Samsung. It's got, who knows? Who knows what this is going to end up actually feeling like. The LG UX has been admittedly bad, but if performance managed to live up to 2016 standards, I might actually be able to overlook it. I mean, right now I'm using my Honor 5X as a daily driver because I lent my OnePlus 2 to Corey while he waits for his S7 Edge to arrive. So I've been dealing with a slow phone and ugly UI, and I can deal with it, but of course not for prolonged periods of time. So that's ultimately, I think, what's gonna matter to me most is just the speed, the fluidity, and the overall feeling of the package, rather than just dismissing it because it's not what it could have been because of the modularity, which might end up surprising me in the future. I don't expect it to, but if it does, I might just have to write an article about how good it is.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned the always on display and feature parity. That's one of the things that I had a problem with is that the display itself is not an OLED display.
Yeah.
It's going to be an LCD display. And so I'm wondering, like, what about when I'm in bed at night and I've got my phone plugged in and I've got this really bright light because my entire backlight is lit. I mean, to me, always on display, it really needs an OLED panel to be able to be effective.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, I can tell you something. I did use an LG phone with an ambient display, and that was the Nexus 5X, which also has an LCD panel, and it was not nice. Just the fact that whenever I would get a notification or whenever I would move near my desk or tumble it a little bit, my nightstand, it would flash this this black background, which in the dark was not black at all. It's just like a very bright gray. That's definitely annoying, and I hope that's not going to be an issue. Who knows? It might have unprecedented levels of contrast, but again, I doubt it. In LG displays, they have actually disappointed me because with the G4 they said, "Whoa, quantum dot display! It's going to have the most accurate colors because it's using this DCI standard for movies." Yes, but most of the content that you download is not actually encoded to run that way, so you actually get an even worse color distortion with 99% of the content you're actually going to stumble upon. So the color accuracy point is completely moot because it expanded the color space, and it actually looks completely color inaccurate. That's one of the things that I didn't like about the G4 and about LG displays. It could also be that the fact that I'm used to Samsung displays, and I've been using that with the Note 4 and the Note 5 for the better part of the past year.
Yeah, and so I don't mean to be a negative Nancy on the G5. I don't want you to get me wrong. I applaud LG for what they're doing and what they're looking at doing. I have my cautions, and
it's an engineering feat. It's an engineering feat at the very least,
Exactly, and it's interesting to see where they're moving towards. I wish they didn't do this to their flagship. I think is probably my biggest stumbling point. I wish they would have done what Samsung did, and it's weird to say follow Samsung's model, but come out with a secondary flagship like they did with the Note Edge, and try something completely different and see how it works and fix it and fine tune it and fix it. And now we're 3 generations down the road, and you've actually got the S7 Edge, which for all intents and purposes is a far superior device to the standard S7. Not just the Edge screen, it works and it's not compromising anything. So I wish LG would have followed that road. But while you were talking, it made me think of a couple other concerns I have regarding the G5 and that 2800 milliamp hour battery. You've got 2800 milliamp hours, which is less than the G4, more than the S6 had, but considerably less than the S7 and S7 Edge. You've got the new Qualcomm A20. It is it a still 5.3 inch or 5.2 inch display? 5.3 inch display, so it's a fairly large display. And you've now got an LCD with an always-on display. What is this thing's battery going to be like?
Right, and they mentioned during the event that I think they said it was 0.5% per hour. If you multiply that over a full day, that ends up being a not insignificant amount of battery that's consumed just by the always-on display.
Maybe this always-on display isn't a true always-on display because Samsung had said that their display is sucking less than 1% of battery an hour. I think it was close to between 0.5 and 0.75 percent an hour, and that's an OLED display. You're talking about an LCD where regardless, you've got to light the entire panel in order for you to get any sort of display on there. And then you've also got it actually adjusting for light levels as well. So if you're in a dark room, you can have it dim, but if you're sitting underneath an office, you're going to need to have that somewhat bright so you can see that display. So, maybe they're pulling some trickery in always on display, whereas it might react more like the Nexus display did.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not, because again, that's just a bad user experience. It's just not nice, and I know that, for example, the Moto X style got a lot of flack over it because again, it switched to an LCD panel and it pretty much lost much of the appeal of one of its most appealing features, the fact that it had the always on display, which Motorola was one of the first people that brought it to the table, and now they they didn't completely ruin the feature, but and let's just be honest now. I do get that LG, if there's another manufacturer that is not going to use Samsung technology, it's LG, because LG is trying to promote its own display technology. But we're seeing AMOLED displays on so many other devices that it kind of takes away from the fact that other phones are getting very good screens. The fact that the Nexus 6B has one of the latest gen AMOLED displays, it might not be the highest quality out of the factory, but it's still very, very good screen. And the fact that so many other OEMs are adopting AMOLED with amazing contrast and very punchy or accurate colors depending on which setting you put it on, I think that LG really needs to improve its battery technology. LCD was king for so long, but I think it was around the Note 4 AMOLED just decidedly took the crown, and ever since I've just seen that LCD technology is so unappealing now that I've experienced post Note 4 AMOLED displays.
And it's even a little bit more disappointing. I just purchased a television set, and I've got the new Sony's with Android TV baked in. But on LG, it's disappointing to see them still stuck on LCD with their phones when they are producing the only real marketable retail environment OLED television. And I mean, it looks gorgeous. So seeing them having that technology and knowing how to use that technology and not using it in their cell phone is kind of disappointing, especially when you want to do things like always on display and stuff.
Yeah. And in terms of features that you're going to notice the most, I mean, the display is literally how you interact with your phone 99% of the time when you're using your phone. Only when you're using it for a phone call do you not care about the screen. So, Samsung is the king of displays right now, and it's really noticed. And like we said, that LCD screen has an impact. I do want to make a quick correction. It's actually 0.8% battery per hour that the LG G5 was announced to be using. So significant, almost a 1% per hour decline based off of that always-on display because of the LCD.
Yeah.
Or about the same amount as Google Play Services uses in about an hour.
Right.
Oh, put the two together. That's nice. Yeah.
Poor G5 owner's going to be plugging in at 2 o'clock.
Nah. I mean, who knows? Again, and as we discussed at length on plenty of episodes, we shouldn't fall in the hardware dyslexia of thinking that the battery capacity is ultimately going to be what dictates the efficiency of the battery drain. But then again, Samsung had... The Note 5 had very, very good efficiency. I was able to get 5-hour screen on time, and the benchmarks to test actual battery drain and component efficiency, like PC Mark, showed amazing results, like 9 hours of work time score, which is above the Note 4 and the Note 3. And most devices out there, I think it's only the devices that only have A53 cores that actually surpass, like the Moto X Play, which has a huge battery and it only has A53 cores, which are power efficiency cores. So it's no surprise it's going to do very well in the test. The Honor 5X also has A53 cores only because of Snapdragon 616, which again does amazing on the PC Mark and has amazing battery life. The Honor 5X, 3,000 milliamp hour battery, and it's a mid-range phone, and I get like 6 hours screen on time out of it. So it's disappointing to hear that you're not having that good of an experience so far, but I do think that things are going to stabilize. I do think that you're going to end up seeing some nice results, and if not, well, we got to spill quite a bit of digital ink on it, because it is something that should be unacceptable. The fact that you're getting more efficient components, because Samsung literally improves the efficiency of their screens every single generation by around 8 to 15%. So you are probably getting a more efficient screen. You're probably getting what's supposed to be a more efficient processor, which firmware throttling measures involved to try and make sure that it doesn't do more than it should. The processor itself is built on 40 nanometers, even the Snapdragon 820, so there's no excuse, because the 28 nanometer build of the Snapdragon 810 was absolutely awful with the A72 cores. And this what Samsung has such an amazing lead with the Exynos. So, there's no excuse. Even the battery size is bigger. So there will be no excuse for this device to have worse battery than the S6, or even just a little bit better. It has to have it has to have better battery. It really has to have better battery at this point.
I think we're going to see batteries somewhere close to the Note 5. And just for reference, like we were talking about, when I was talking about my battery issues before in the Note 5, which was probably in the S7, it's probably about 30 minutes ago or so, I was around 49% battery, and I'm sitting at 46%. And we've sent, 5 or 6 Hangout messages back and forth during the podcast, and it's otherwise been just sitting there. So it is definitely draining, and Android system is at the top of my battery usage, which definitely sucks. But like you said, I think it's something that's going to stabilize. And this is still we're still. I guess it's March 1st technically now. That's after midnight. But we're still 11 days out from the actual launch of the phone. So there's still a chance that we might get a last-minute software update that might fix some of these issues and fix some of the graphical issues that I'm seeing. But one other thing I wanted to mention here today, we haven't really talked about it. Not a lot of people have talked about it. But HTC, they were not existed in MWC for the first time in as long as I can remember. And now they're saying that they're going to be coming out with a new device that's supposed to have a respectable camera. I know we want to wrap up here quickly, but what do you guys think about what HTC has coming around the corner?
I'm skeptical. I'd love to see it. The camera has long been one of the biggest problems in HTC. They've come back and said, we understand, we know it, we're going to fix it. So then they added a gimmicky second camera. And that was just as pathetic. Coming from a user that's used the M7 and M8 and been very sick of the performance on HTC, it's what they need to do. And it's one of those things that if I see it, I'm going to have to see it to be able to believe it. But if they can deliver on their promise here, they're going to be much better positioned, because that's long been one of their biggest problems.
Do you think they have a chance to make a foothold in the market when you've got Samsung top dog, LG is doing something different, don't know whether it's good or not at this point, and then you've got Huawei making strides into the US market? Do you think there's room for an HTC anymore, who used to sit comfortably around number 3?
Yeah, but I think they need to differentiate themselves. They've done that with the Boom speaker, but that's old news. And I've said it before, differentiation is what's going to be key for them. And I don't believe that the camera market is exactly at the pinnacle of where it can be. I think there's still innovation to be had. I think there's still improvement to be had. And quite frankly, there's some low light performance improvement on the S7, but I'm looking at side-by-sides here. There's not much of a difference between the S7 and S6. Yes, that's because the S6 had such a great camera that, that's part of it. But I do believe that there's a gap for someone to come in. Is HTC going to be the company? That's the question.
And they definitely need something. What are your thoughts about it, Mario?
I think that, honestly, Samsung has been doing such a great job with its cameras. I think that that there's nothing to worry about with Samsung cameras at this point. The only thing that I will worry about with Samsung cameras is the fact that they're trying out new sensors. The S6, the Note 4, the S6, and the Note 5 had pretty much the same sensor with different software. The same Sony sensor, at least. I'm not sure if they switched around their ISOCELL or whatever secondary sensor they used. The fact that they're actually switching their camera hardware this time could bring some concerns, but again, I trust Samsung. I trust that there's things that with Samsung phones you don't even worry about anymore. Camera, display, it's a given.
So it's kind of like Samsung is the new Apple. You're actually going to get a really good device when it comes to hardware. You're not going to have many issues with it.
Yeah, I mean, it is like that as well. And this is something I talked about with Corey about the event. It's the fact that this was the most Apple-looking event. This event was so polished, and Samsung used all the buzzwords that Apple would use, and just the way it was structured, the way the reveal event felt. It was like, wow, this is a very, very mature company that really wants to push out a quality premium product and push out the experience more so than the hardware. They barely talked about the hardware. They barely talked about the hardware with the S6. In fact, they hadn't named the processor. And in this event, they didn't even name the processor either. Whereas you have other companies literally invite Qualcomm onto the stage to talk all about their processors. Samsung didn't care. Samsung cared about the user experience more so than the hardware and the specs that they were selling. And I think it's working out for them. And again, they don't have to. I mean, they talked about the camera because everyone loves the camera, and they talked about the new technology because it's new technology. But I don't think anyone at this point really worries that Samsung's going to mess up their camera, because they've had consistently, since the Note 4, consistently the best, if not near best, camera experience on Android at the time of their release. And even, I would argue that even the Note 3 had one of the best cameras at its time. Maybe the G2 was competing back then. But it's a given. It's not something that I would worry about anymore. And whereas you have people like HTC, companies like HTC, where we're constantly worrying about their camera. Even Motorola, even up to last year, we were not sure if Motorola had what it took in order to provide a good camera experience. I think that is what I still think about HTC. Do they have what it takes to provide a good camera experience? They've been touting their camera. I think it was, they're saying that it's going to have good results or whatever. Of course you're going to say that. Ultimately, I just want to see it in action, because you were touting a 21 something megapixel camera with the M9 or whatever, and it ended up sucking. I mean, that's really the only way to describe it. It ended up sucking relative to the best out there, which is Samsung, which we don't worry about anymore. So, Samsung has in the bag, it has the best silicon, it has it in the bag. It's had the best silicon at the time of release, every single iteration since ever, pretty much. The best display, well, now it's pretty much a given too, or a very high quality display, and the best camera. Those are things that Samsung has as a given. The only thing that hasn't been consistent is perhaps RAM. The fact that the S5 and the S6 didn't have didn't really increase RAM like a Note 5 and the Note 4 and the Note 3, I mean, but still. You know what I mean? It's a given. I don't worry about Samsung hardware anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there. I'm not worried about this S7 hardware at all. Like you said, I definitely think they have pretty much the best components in the industry going into it. So it's going to be interesting to see what the rest of this year brings, though. So we've still got another 9 months left of it.
Absolutely, yeah. It's been an exciting time with these two phones, the S7 and the G5. And we've just spent about an hour talking about the two. I think we're gonna wrap it up here, but want to thank you guys so much for listening. Really some good discussion points on the Galaxy S7 compared to the LG G5 and where their future is headed. Really nice to see that you ended up getting your S7 very early, Daniel, being able to provide us with some of those initial feedback. And I know we've only had our hands on it for about a few hours, so as time goes on, we'll have more feedback to provide, especially about the battery. But it's interesting to see LG trying something different. Whether or not that's going to take off will be determined. But that'll do it for this week. I'm sure in future weeks we'll have more to add to it. I'll wrap it up here. I'm Corey Fiak. You can find me on Twitter at Codismsdev, where I just put a tweet out about what my single biggest factor is that caused me to upgrade to the S7.
And I'm Daniel Marchena. You can find me at Ultimax98 on Twitter and Reddit. And if you have any questions about the S7, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or Reddit as well. I'm pretty much on there all the time. And I will say, it is kind of fun putting your phone in a drink. just got to clean off the day, give it a shower.
Yeah, you can use it in the shower. I've actually been doing that with the C5 Compact.
I'd be too afraid of dropping it and it shattering.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm Mario Serafero, editor-in-chief at XDA Flashaholic in Recovery. If you've been with us so far, thank you. We've got a lot of patience. Don't forget that we have a OnePlus X giveaway contest. The details are in the description in case you missed it the first time. Hope you enjoy the podcast, and I hope you also look forward to our content on all these new devices, which we'll be deeply and throughoutly reviewing soon.